Homer Plessy was born on March 17, 1862, in New Orleans, Louisiana. Homer Plessy was a shoemaker. Plessy could have easily passed for white. He described himself as 7/8 Caucasian and 1/8 African blood, which nothingness made him colored under the terms of Separate Car Act of 1890. Plessy challenged the Jim Crow laws which set up separate but equal facilities in the South. He expected to be forced off the train or at least arrested. As the train began to move, the conductor asked Plessy if he was colored. Plessy told him he was, and the conductor told him to move to the correct car, which Plessy refused to do. Plessy stated that he was an American citizen and he'd paid for the first-class ticket. The conductor stopped the train, and Detective Christopher Kane boarded the car and arrested him. Plessy put up a fight, and as a result, he was dragged off the train with help of other passengers. Plessy spent a night in jail before appearing in criminal court before the judge John Howard Ferguson to answer his charges of violating the Separate but Equal Car Act. Plessy's bail was at $500. He wasn't rearraigned until October 1892, 4 months after his arrest. The public schools were faced with many financial difficulties, leaving many African American children to drop out and wander the streets.
Once Reconstruction ended, the people who were in charge of the South before the Civil War slowly started to regain power. And these people were not happy that their slaves were now freedmen. And so they began to pass a number of laws known as the Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow was the name of a popular minstrel show. And a minstrel show was a performance that made fun of black people. And on your screen right now, you're seeing an example of a minstrel show from the 1940s. The Jim Crow laws were designed to isolate African Americans and place them in an inferior position compared to white people. This was the beginning of segregation in the post-Civil War South. In many Southern churches, people were taught that whites were the chosen people and that blacks were cursed.
The term Jump Jim Crow was actually a song and dance routine written in 1828 by a white comedian by the name of T.D. Daddy Rice, and it was a sort of comedy skit that poked fun at the idea of African American men being freed from slavery. Here's a clip of that same dance routine.
Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow.
This is a picture of Thomas Dartmouth Rice, also better known as Daddy Rice, who is an American performer and playwright who often used blackface and made it very popular to display African American culture. Thomas D. Rice did so in minstrel shows, which are a form of American entertainment, usually people in blackface depicting African American people who sing, dance, or perform music acts. Jim Crow laws played a big part in segregation. There is physical segregation of public parks, public schools, beaches, and transportation. And also things like drinking fountains, restrooms, and restaurants were also segregated. Segregation was seen as constitutional because the term separate but equal was used as a way to shield the act of racism. Separate but equal means that as long as the two facilities were separated by race but still equal in opportunity and quality, that it was okay for that to happen. When Homer Plessy refused to move from his seat on the train, he was violating the Separate but Equal Act. He believed that he was equal to all the other Caucasian people on the train, but the law enforcement did not. Homer Plessy soon ended up in jail and was determined to take the case up to higher positions in the United States. He wanted to prove that he was being morally correct by sitting where he wanted to sit on the train. Eventually, in 1896, Homer Plessy's court case moved up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the real question there was to answer was if separate but equal violated the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868, which granted citizenship to all people born in the United States. That includes former slaves and gave them protection of laws, as if they were a normal American citizen. The U.S. Supreme Court ultimately concluded that the separate but equal standard was constitutional and that the 14th Amendment was not violated. Homer Plessy's act of rebellion was actually planned out by the Citizens Committee. The Citizens Committee disagreed with the Separate Cars Act because not only was it unfair to people, but it was also expensive for the Louisiana East Railroad. The Citizens Committee wanted a peaceful way to protest against this law that they did not approve of, so they chose Homer Plessy to do the job for them. After Plessy's court case was closed, this resulted in many protests and people speaking out against the Separate but Equal Act. Homer Plessy may have broken the law, but he was still seen as a civil hero because he stood up for his rights and what he believed in.